Hello and welcome to PPC Heroes video blog brought to you by Hanapin Marketing. Today we're going to be talking about large PPC accounts, and we're going to give you advice straight from the mouths of some of our expert PPCers. All three of the accounts supervisors and account executives we have talking to you today have accounts that are large in terms of their spend, the client, and also their AdWords structure, so campaigns, keywords, etc. So, as they answer questions based on organization, strategy, and advice, their answers will be well-rounded and applicable to your account needs. So thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for a very in-depth account of how to deal with large PPC accounts. So when you have a large account in terms of the actual size, like the number of products that they offer or the number of components, do you find that generally you divide or organize the account based around products and services or around audiences, or if you do both for large accounts, is there a way to keep it separate, or is there a lot of overlap?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is both. So you do want to have it separated by products and services. I mean, that's just best practices, right?
The spend of the account doesn't really dictate how much division it needs. How many products or services and how many audiences it has really determine what you need to structure it like.
But you may run into a situation where the products and services are the same, but you're selling those products and services to two totally different marketplaces.
So for mine, they have a decent number of services and they're targeting different audiences, so I try to set up a structure that kind of each product or service is in a different campaign, but then you also target different audiences in different campaigns, because that's the level at which you can do more detailed audience targeting than if you're trying to target multiple audiences within the same campaign. Like, I'm not just going to put all of my, like if I'm selling, women's shoes, I'm not going to put all of my high heels into the same campaign if they're targeting one's high heels for strippers and one's high heels for business women, right? Like, I can't put them in the same campaign because they're different demographics. So
every audience is going to have different, and especially with the ad copy, I mean, that's a big one too. I mean, your ad copy needs to speak to the desired audience. So you may have a nearly identical ad group in a CEO-centered campaign versus like a everyday consumer campaign, and you need to write your ad copy that's going to speak to those people in different ways. Like a business decision they're going to be thinking more about like the bottom line, right? Like, what does this do to improve my business? Whereas an end user might be buying on passion, or making a quick decision, or hey, that's really cool, I want that. So yeah, it's definitely important to segment things. I think ad copy number one, but also there's going to be some overlap in the keywords, but there's definitely going to be some keywords that are going to be unique to each.
So I think that if your demographics are different enough, you might get more value out of separating them and having some competition between those two campaigns, and just determining which performs better for certain products or certain keywords, than just saying, well, these are going to overlap and I want to have the same keyword in both, but I want to target it to all of them, so which one do I put it in? Like, the ads are going to be different. You need to maybe just try to reduce the competition as much as you can, but understand that, like, duplicate keywords aren't good and you shouldn't have them. But testing and allowing keywords in different campaigns to compete to determine where something really should be, I don't think is necessarily the worst thing. It's just that if you have a really large account, that can get out of hand quickly.
There's over 20,000 keywords in our account, and when you pause a keyword, sometimes it'll be hard to remember why you pause it, just because there's so many. And when you go to create a new ad group and you add keywords, that can be difficult too, because then you may add one thing that's not in there, but it's in a different ad group that you didn't think about. So you definitely have to make sure that you're not adding duplicates into your account. With these large 20,000 keywords, there's rarely a keyword that hasn't been searched already. And I think that you get to a point with larger accounts where you'll go to do keyword research and you're like, I really can't find, like you're struggling to find keywords. So something to do is look at the keywords you already have and just see if there's a lot that have never done anything, and do you really need them turned on right now if they haven't done anything? Because I think there's a lot of keywords that people have added because they think it might do something in the future, but is that really the best approach to take, or should you wait and add it in when you actually know it's going to benefit your account? I think that's two different strategies.
So that's basically what I'm saying. Yes, there's competition. Sometimes the audiences are so different that it's worth having a little bit of competition and overlap to segment them and get better performance from that testing. Like, you test the segmentation and determine who performs better than just trying to lump everybody together and assume that, you know, you're going to just be running this one keyword and however it does, it does. Otherwise, I mean, you should reduce competition by geo-targeting differently or targeting a different demographic. People probably don't use negative keywords enough to eliminate some of the overlap that they have. Like, that's not the only way to eliminate it. Isn't, you know, geo-targeting it to separate ways. You can also just stop your ads from showing for certain things. So
Yeah.
so anyway, yes, I think it's probably more valuable to separate than to worry too much about duplication, because there are other ways to stop it.
Do you find that because you do have a lot of data, you have to monitor it more frequently?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, if you have an account that spends thousands and thousands of dollars a day and you just don't pay attention to it, or maybe you make a change and you don't act on that change or test the change for a few days, I mean, that's lots of money. I mean, we have a responsibility to our clients to always know where their money is being spent.
I try to get into the accounts, all the accounts every day, but with the larger accounts, you have to actually do something every day. Like, sometimes I look into an account, it's running okay, maybe make a few changes, but with the larger accounts, something can happen so quickly that your spend increases drastically on a certain keyword that hadn't been performing for, I don't know, the past month, and then now all of a sudden it's gotten a ton of clicks. So you have to go in and make more changes than you do on smaller accounts every day.
Part of the other challenge of it is that small changes can have such a large effect. You know, so and testing happens faster. So if you make a change, you know, for example, if you have a small account, maybe you make a change and you can't make a decision on that change for a month because you need the data to collect, right? Because it's slow moving, not a lot of clicks. You need to have statistical relevancy. Well, on a small account, that might take a month, right? On some of my larger accounts, I could generate that amount of data in an hour, right? Yeah. So it's a balance between, well, is that hour snapshot statistically relevant? Well, no, it's still not, you know what I mean? Because it's just 1 hour of one day. There's so many situational aspects that could have gone into why that change may have performed better or worse. But you do need to be careful of it. Not
being too reactive is important, because day-by-day data isn't necessarily always valid. You have to consider longer-term trends. Like, if this app performed better today, and that's statistically valid according to how much traffic it received, is there also a Monday versus Wednesday difference in performance? Is there a weekend versus weekday difference? Is there, you know, a longer term difference that I'm not accounting for by making decisions on a day-by-day basis? And so you can't be fooled by your large traffic numbers into reacting to things that might not really exist.
Trying to find the balance. I think with larger accounts, because there's so much stuff going on, there's so many things you want to do. So you go in there and you make a lot of changes, but then, you know, performance increases, but then you're like, well, why did performance increase? I did 10 different things in the past week. But something that I do like is that when you try something out or test something, the results come fairly quickly. So you can maybe let a certain campaign run for a week and see the results of it, where in a smaller account you have to let it run for a month before you really see any significant results. So with larger accounts, it's trying to find the balance between letting things run long enough that you get the results and making sure you're making those changes.
So what I tend to do is, the longer I've been managing an account, the more I have a feel for it. and we make decisions based on the numbers, but you can have a sense for how an account is going to react. And so I know on some of my high spend accounts that I've been working with for months and months that what the expected change is, and then after a few days maybe I can make a decision on it. And more often than not, I make the right decision based on the data. And the change you make after that tells you if you made the right decision. So did the account improve or decline?
You need to develop your ability to think of kind of strategy for a larger account, because like I said, any change you do make will have an impact really quickly. So you need to kind of have a strategy where I'm going to grow this account by doing this. If it doesn't work, you're going to have to react very quickly. So you need to lay out a plan in advance for, like, if this happens, I'm going to, and know what you're going to do, because otherwise in an account that changes quickly, it can be kind of hard to think on your feet.
I've actually started thinking ahead and thinking, okay, if this isn't working, I have to pause this. Do I have another campaign that I can turn on to kind of replace it?
Having a strategy is super important, because if an account's spending over thousands of dollars a day, you need to have a plan going into it. Because if you turn it on and all of a sudden, like, all this data comes back at you and you're not within goal metrics, it's not going to leave a positive taste in the client's mouth. Like, if we didn't already have some type of expectation of how this thing is going to kick off, or if it's bad, turn around, or if it's okay, how we're going to improve it.
What advice would you give someone who is given a big account that has never worked on one before? What is, like, your top advice you get before they even get started?
Don't forget everything that you have done in smaller accounts, and just pay attention to it really, really often. The principles aren't that different. It's just that things can change really quickly. I really don't think the principles are that different. You need to eventually be thinking of it in a different way if your account is so large and growth oriented that you constantly need to be doing big things to grow it. Like, that's different, but I don't think people should be freaked out about big accounts. All the same principles apply, like in terms of good management initially. I think initially, while you're getting familiar with the big account, you just need to pay a lot of attention, make sure things go as expected. I think that sometimes moving from accounts where things move slowly, again, nothing moves that slowly in PPC, but in an account that's spending, like I said, $200 a day versus, $4,000 versus $10,000 a day, I think that people don't always expect to have to go into the account and react as frequently as you do when there's a lot of traffic in your account.
I think the best advice is to talk to the client, because you might think, well, this is the audience I'm targeting, but if they're the client, they know their target market, so make sure you talk to them and get all the information so that you can start focusing on which group of people you're targeting and which keywords work best for them. So talk to the client first before you just go in and start saying, oh, I think this keyword will work, or I think this one will work.
So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just know the client, know the product or service, know what the goal is, make sure you have very well-defined metrics, performance metrics, and have a plan before you flip the switch, because you don't want surprises. They're going to happen, but you should at least be prepared for what the potential is going to be. If you're so far outside of your range, then, I mean, if you just go into something hastily and make some decisions and turn it on, and you're just so far out, it's really hard to backpedal from that.
Yeah, sure.
So that's my advice.
Thank you for tuning in to Hanapin Marketing's video blog. For more news and information about the pay-per-click industry, check out our blog at ppchero.com and our Twitter account, PPC Hero.